Chronicles of AghyNarnia. The Chronicles of AghyNarnia.
The boy says he never spoke and I never answered.
Hello there. Welcome to the Chronicles of AghyNarnia, the podcast that delves into the lives of everyday legends as they tell us their stories, the tales of yesteryears gone by and ones yet to come. I'm your host Andy Dolan, part-time teacher, part-time member of the People's Front of Judea, full-time wind-up merchant. I'm here with my fantastic co-host and friend Claire Devine as we both navigate our way into chronicling these amazing stories into becoming myth and legend. What can I say about Claire? She's a diligent pharmacist by day, a talented artist/musician by night, and above all, a mother 24/7. We both grew up in a wonderful little place in the middle of nowhere called Aghyaran, or as I've always called it, AghyNarnia. Whenever I told people where I was from, they would often struggle with how to pronounce Aghyaran. They'd say, "Aghy, what?" So after a while, I just found it easier to say I was from AghyNarnia. I would tell them you go about 5 miles up the road from Castle Derry until you lose your phone signal. Not long after that, you'll come to a crossroads with an old abandoned wardrobe. Go beyond the wardrobe and turn left. But whatever you do, never turn right. We'll never find you again. So let me tell you about AghyNarnia, our beloved townland way out in the wild west of County Tyrone, way up yonder in the north of Ireland. It is a beautiful part of the world with its green meadows, roving hills, tranquil rivers, enchanting woodlands, and of course its charming inhabitants. So home is where our podcast story begins. We'll meet some of the wonderful people of AghyNarnia, the AghyNarnians if you will, and hear their stories firsthand. There's something magical in the air around home and there's something special in the water. Then again, we do have a distillery nearby, so maybe that's just the gin. The community here is 1 in a million, and over the journey of our podcast, you'll find out why. In seasons to come, we'll venture further afield to other communities beyond the wardrobe, but never down that road to the right. In terms of socials, you can find us as AghyNarnia. So firstly, Claire, cracky chat, how are you?
I am doing fantastic and enjoying this lovely weather we're having at the minute.
We're being spoiled
Yes.
twice in the 1 month.
I know. I'm just wondering how long is it going to last for.
Claire, please tell me who's our special guest today.
And this evening we have Monsignor Andy Dolan.
Monsignor Andy Dolan, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Well, I think that's me you're talking about.
You yourself and I.
I myself and me, also all three. Nice that you're asking me, but hopefully I don't stray and ramble too much.
No, we love a bit of straying around.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's an honour to have you here with us today as a man born and bred in Aghyaran, through the wars on the football pitch of Aghyaran, and to spend so many years in Derry thereafter in his world as a priest and a very highly respected priest at that. So it's a privilege for us to have you here today.
Absolutely.
So let's kick this off. Father, would you tell us some of your memories of your home and your family and growing up in this wonderful place, Aghyaran, or AghyNarnia as I call it?
Well, a large family, 6 boys and 3 girls, and one other girl who died in the early years of my father and mother's life as a couple, and by accident in the home. Like everywhere else, there was nothing to spare, and people worked hard. And I'd say even, talking about home that way, growing up, that was always one of the things our neighbours and people, from all backgrounds always said, you don't realise how hard your parents worked. And I suppose there were 9 of us on a wee farm at that time. It took hard work just to keep all mouths fed. And we didn't grow up in isolation. We had our pals, we had our friends. We went to school. The bigger ones in the house took you by the hand to school and all the rest of it. And it was an interesting place, and when school was a place of a lot of vivid memories.
I would say that.
Vivid memories is the only way I can describe them. I know we had a teacher that was, I suppose nowadays probably called an iconic figure,
Yeah.
But looking back to the age of a child, you saw it as tough enough, and she was a tough teacher in many ways, strict disciplinarian, and I would say even with the junior teacher in the school, in someone summary, she ran a tight ship and that. But looking at it back in a different sense, here was 96, I think, would have been the top role in a 2-room school. So you had the infants classes, and then I think maybe as far as second or third class, and the rest school from fourth class upwards until you was 14 when you left primary school in our time. There was no St Eugenius and Castleberg or any secondary moderns then. And so you look across the range of years, you look across the range of abilities, the amount of differentiation and so on that we talk about today. That word wouldn't have been used then, like, but you know, taking in all sorts of classes of ability. And I suppose, to be fair, looking back, I say, well, you say maybe everybody, but most people anyway, I say nearly all, left school with some basic abilities to read and write and count and distinguish one thing from the other, like, and things like nature study and all the rest of it. So there was as broad a based education, I suppose, as resources allowed, and you know, the numbers that it allowed and all the rest of it. So I think we have to look back and say, you know, we can look at it harshly in one sense, but also with a sense of appreciation on the other hand, you know.
Yeah, I think when you flip it and you look at it from her point of view,
Aye.
and as you said, like the different abilities, never mind the number
Yeah.
of pupils in a
Yeah.
very small environment, extremely difficult, and running a tight ship and being
Yeah.
a tough disciplinarian is the only way to actually get through those days.
Aye, it would have been, you know, so in that way, like, I mean, that's, we you know, I suppose we maybe thought her harsh at the time, but we could also be harsh in our criticism as well.
Definitely.
And discipline back in them days was
It was
very different
bad.
from now.
Well, it was punitive, you know, really slapping and all that sort of thing, you know, and step out of line, like, you were in for it, as I say.
Yeah.
And very often you go out to the ditch and bring in your own instrument of execution, you know.
Oh God.
The rod from there, you know, and get a whack or two.
Will you try to pick something that would have been least damage, or
Well, they all seem to be sore. Speaking from memory. Yes, that was an aspect of life. But again, you know, and then again, every family there, like, I mean, everybody had a bit of bread and their lunch with them, you know, when there was nothing, you know, there was no class distinction. You know, that was the thing about it. Like, it wasn't like at the part of the parish was well wealthy or another part of it wasn't. Okay, some people might have been a wee bit better off than others, but by and large, you know, everybody thought, you know, the other person was better off than themselves.
yeah.
And I suppose that's a bit of sort of the equation.
I think back then you might not have had as much, but you were as content with what you did have.
Well, you see, I suppose as time evolved, you know, privilege became rights.
Yeah.
In terms of what you could have and what you couldn't have. You know, and as things improved, you know, and I suppose into the 60s things improved, you know, for every family there was a bit of work here or there. And the sad thing was, and I look back at school and look at school photographs, many people who actually emigrated, like, had to go off from big families and find
the
employment
work,
from,
yeah.
you know, so you're talking from Glasgow to Liverpool, Manchester, down and to London, and of course to New York, Philadelphia, different places we talked about earlier before we came on air, you know.
Yeah, it just happens in waves, doesn't it? You lose generations of great people.
Great people, like, it just wasn't the work for them, and you know, you'd have to admire their initiative and admire how well many of them had done as well over the years.
Oh,
and
definitely.
come back, you know, and you could say well done.
Just to get away and to go to a new place and actually achieve success somewhere different and rise to the top.
And find a life that some came back, like, and maybe bought a wee place or whatever they did, like, but by and large most never came back. Their family would come back to see where they were. Parents were reared and all the different things that we talk about. But you know, that's how it was.
I think there was like a work ethic that was instilled by families.
Work ethic,
growing up.
that's what I was talking about earlier. You know, the work ethic was there, and you were challenged by what people had to do before you.
Yeah.
And your family home would have been where the Paddy Hans and Marion lives now.
That's where they live now. That my father and mother went there, and must have been some few years after they were married. They lived in Mullinabeen first, and then they went
Migrated over to the...
Migrated, they made that fantastic change of culture and climate and food and all the rest of it. That
Not
transition,
wrong, Walden
that transition, you know, across over Aghyaran crossroads up the hill.
Yeah.
But I mean, so that was it, and you know the housing and that wasn't good on it. I mean, they had eventually built a family home there, and then as time went by, more land and Tinnamungan and things like that. You know, as family grew up, it was.
How long would a trek, because you went to Carrie Cohan School, is that
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
How long of a trek would that have taken you in the
Well,
morning?
I mean, it depends. But there were three different ways we could go to school. You know, one was up through Hamilton, through the fields, through the grass. A lot of time you're wearing wellies anyway, you know, and other times maybe easier down past Buster's house. Depends what was in the fields at the time of the year.
Yeah,
where
true.
you went. And sometimes you walk around the road, and I suppose if it was wet or at home, there was a van or a tractor or something that could drive you to school, like if you needed to be, you know.
Yeah.
And that's just how it was.
I remember one time going through the fields back there towards Hans's, and I've only ever done it once. It was myself and like Michael Anderson, maybe Paul Anderson, and the cows that were in that field that day were just mental. I mean, we ran for our lives. I mean, jumping gate just to get away to
But
safety.
I mean, you know, you had to throw your leg over barbed wire as a child, you know. And I often look back and say, nobody thought of a wee step up one side and down the other side of the way, you know, which would have been very simple, like,
Wouldn't it?
but I mean, those things just weren't thought of. They weren't thought of. They weren't consciousness.
Those
you
fields
know.
were designed for cows and
They were
for
designed
sheep.
to keep things out rather than
Yeah.
allowing you to cross them on your way to school.
Tell us about your mum and dad, Tommy and Sissy. What's your memories of them?
Well, I mean, as in fairly early, like, they were hard working, you know, and both did their best to provide for us and give us the best they could. And it was a house like where a lot of people came and went to our house, you know. People, you know, visited. A lot of
Killian.
people come.
Ian and
Hey,
Regan.
People Killian.
Killian, you know, and cards and different things would happen in the house, you know, and they were up and out early in the morning, you know. My mother would have been, you know, my longest memory would be like my mother went out in the fields helping, you know, when we were children as well, you know. Still have to come in and make a dinner and get on with the work, you know, and I suppose my father would have been, say, hard goer and they'd be up early milking cows and that. That's my earliest memories of them, you know.
Yeah.
And I suppose the one crop that I remember, you know, they say smells and memory go together, and the smell of lint rotting in dams
Right.
the house. Flax, I suppose, is best known as, you know, that was one of the earliest memories, and that was hard work. And I think it was after the war, you know, that would have been, we were still children, like, but there were sort of good grants for it then and stuff like that. You know, you got their sewing flax and that had to be pulled by hand.
Right.
So that was one of the early hard work. And people helped each other out, you know, and then there was deep in the dam and all the rest of it. And one man generally kept going up and down the road in a trap till the pub, a mile and a half down the road, and make sure the men were particularly fortified when they came to taking the lint out of the dam. You know? So that was a whole culture in its own right, you know. And across our meadow one time, this man, not be nameless, shall we say, the horse knew the road better than he did, but at that point, but it wasn't too good on the what they call the cache over the shock, you know. But then it went off lines, to use a modern terminology, and he had no control. And thankfully, my father was fit enough to reach for the horse, because it happened was as the trapping down, the foot would stick at the back of the call, you know, the step. It got caught, it was dragging the bottom out of the trap, and we were all onto his children, you know. And thankfully,
Oh my God.
and all I can say is there were out of the spokes of the wheels of the trap, there was plenty of shafts for sledges, hammers, whatever else afterward. And that's my last memory of lint.
Yeah.
But that particular crop, I throw them in. They worked hard, I say, and they built it up. And
The memory of the smell, though, it stuck with you.
memory, when anybody ever smelt lint would never forget the smell of it, you know. But to see men in there in their pelt, like, you know, throwing out lint to the dam, you know, it was serious stuff, you know.
My God, like.
It was, I mean, if you're talking about crops that you wouldn't think about today, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's why I would have mentioned it more. And there was always the spuds, and as you grew up, like, you got a job gathering spuds and all the rest of it. So we were never short of work with our house.
Yeah, you're all
As we
taking
grew up.
part.
Yeah, and you're always helping out in other people's
And
houses.
we also helped out. We helped out, especially one set of neighbours, woman and her niece up the road, at a farm, you know, called Nettie's McHugh's, you know. So father would have looked after that because you know, he was always friendly with them, and we would have been set up the road to help out. And the one thing you were never allowed to take was money from anybody.
Yeah.
And we've been dying to have it.
I know.
We weren't allowed to, especially when we were going back to St. Colin, that you could have done with
Yeah.
a pound in your pocket, you know.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't happening. No, and people did. You know, you helped the other people, like, at different times, you know, of the year, and worked through other farmers as well, helping each other, sharing machinery and everything that happened, you know. And that was the order of the day. And then as we were into the 60s, things improved, you know, and all the rest of it, you know. And they provided for us the best they could, you know. And to say it, we were away in St. Columns, it was a different situation, you know.
So you had left Carrick and went to
We went to
St. Columns.
and everybody thought you were very privileged going there.
Yeah.
And that we used to always think, going back to the college, or going for we had a match and coming back, and you were singing Starvation once again, from that Nation Once Again song.
Did you board down there?
We boarded in Derry. So you were no chance. There were no. That's why we were there.
No
There were no
buses.
really good bus connections. You like to go into Oma, like, and all that sort of thing. But then they said if you were in Oma, you would do no work when you come home because you'd be out working again.
Yeah.
So it wasn't going to be so conducive. Not that we killed ourselves working in St. Columns either, but kind of a minimalist approach to life.
Yeah.
But I've still friends to this day that are with in St. Columns,
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
like,
Schools, you're big friends for
Yeah,
life.
you
still
do.
stay connected, But I mean, again, you could look back at like primary school, you could look back at the negativity, but you always look back at the characters and how we made life some way pleasant for ourselves as well,
Yeah.
That was a big thing, But funny, and just talking about that, and going into much detail about St. Columns, like, I mean, we were glad to come out of it and able to move on elsewhere, But you never thought, when we were at home and our noise and carry on about the house, at Christmas time or whatever time you'd be about, say, oh, there'll be peace in this house and you try to go away next week, But I got a very solitary lesson on that, I remember the day Brother Brendan was killed,
Yeah.
on a very memorable, sad day, and it's timeless in terms of how you feel about it. But anyway, I remember the house was very quiet, and because the remains went home from the hospital, and Ellen from the farm I was talking about earlier up the road, she was sitting upstairs in the room with my mother, and I went upstairs, and the two of them were talking, and she said, we hated, suppose she sorrow brought it all out. We hated them going to St. Columns, we missed them in their best years, and here I am at 25 years of age, never had given thought to how our parents felt.
Yeah.
I'd been in the place, and away from home at that time. You were leaving there, I was 12 years and 1 week when I went to St. Columns,
Oh my
and I've been
goodness.
coming and going ever since. And just talking about, even later in seminary, that you come home, people say, hello, you're welcome home. When are you going back? You weren't sure what was a welcome. or
They were just looking for you to leave again.
hanging around too long, all those sort of things
Yeah.
that you'd be light-hearted about. But
Yeah.
it's just how the thing, that's just how,
Yeah.
how it was,
Yeah.
But I don't think you really appreciate home until you actually do go away somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, you don't appreciate even a good meal, you don't get them. So
That's very true.
What were they feeding you down in St. Columns?
Well, I think, I'll tell you, the man who was taking away the swill for the pigs every evening, he had a good load out of it. Yeah, him and the donkey in Kirk. Every day there.
Well, you never seen a skinny pig, to be fair now.
So he lived way down the road from it, but he was feeding a couple of pigs down there, and I would say they weren't hungry after what we had left behind us. But we got by. You can go to a place like that, very balanced, a chip on each shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you say, that's what they are, now we move on.
To move on.
Oh, aye, you've got to learn to let things
was it
go.
ran by priests? Or...
Priest, I run by the diocese, you see.
Right.
And there were probably, when we went to it now in 59, there were probably many more priests from the south than there were as laymen, even though there were probably 1,000 pupils out at that stage, or thereabouts,
Oh, aye, there's always been big numbers around
big
St.
numbers,
Columns.
aye. Well, I mean, it grew in again as time went by, But so you had about, in a year, I think you had about five classes, and there'd been about maybe, it's talking somewhere maybe about 150 per year, and actually to get that for say the 6 years that was that time, you're talking 800-900, depending.
And was there anybody else going down the road with you at that time?
Well, from there was Charlie Gallen, who became principal in St.
That's
Regis.
our principal.
Yes, your principal. Charlie was there. John Francis McNally, who lived up the road here.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Haley. That would have been, I don't think of anybody else, just Castledare, Charlie Donnelly from there. McPhillamys, different other ones.
Yeah.
So there was always a
gang,
and then there were younger ones came later on after our time,
Because nowadays, like, you wouldn't get anybody going to St. Columns from here.
No, we
At all.
can't.
Like, it's all Omar,
wouldn't-
Strabane.
You never would, because say the travel's a bit anyway, the connection, and it's just a bit hard to get to Derry every day, it'll be to Oma, but they said the boarding school and again, I suppose I had a couple of uncles went to St. Columns and things like that as well.
So there's
that
family
was
connections.
family connection, and older brothers as well.
Of course.
Aye, of course, was right. So you had to live in the shadow of them as well.
Yeah.
They kept you right, did they?
Well, go on, like Brendan and myself were the last two there together the same year,
Oh, aye. Michal would have been a few years ahead of you.
Aye.
Michal would have been a few
Well,
years.
he only said 1 year. He refused to go
Right.
back. He only said 1 year.
Oh, really?
1 year he refused to go back, and then Thomas replaced him in that year.
Right.
And then Eugene was before that. So there were 5 of us. In fact, the
Yeah.
Irish teacher, who had been a pretty tough character, looked at me one day and said, I'm going to make a film called The Last of the Dolans. Don't know what he had in mind.
Who would play you in that movie?
They wouldn't be born, they'd have to be invented.
Very good. Good
That's a good
answer.
answer.
And then, so from Derry, then you went to St. Kieran's College in Kilkenny.
Aye, that's right, aye.
So what would be your fond memories of?
Well, it's fun memory first of all, the whole thing of, we think about a priest and say, not me, and that's, the bit, and you debate it, and then I think like most priests, would just touch on that,
Yeah.
you think of missions first. In fact, that's where I'd made up my mind to go till Dalgan, and it was accepted by that stage, and then, you talk it out to people, you have to at some point, and you listen to what they're saying, maybe more seriously for the first time in your life, because it's a very important turning point in your life, whether you're going to go there or wherever you're going, and then changed my mind for that. And I spoke to the president one night, I was looking for a reference to go to seminary, so, and he got chatting to me and sort of why I wasn't going to Derry diocese, and I said, well, a couple of things. At that time, everything affected, you look at everything at that time at 18, if you look at it very romantically, going to the missions, when you're going to change the world. Well, I see, a lot of lads in here have gone to the minister the last few years and they've left, so I mean, if I'm going, I'd like to give it a fair chance, but that can discourage you. I said to him, if people around here are leaving, whatever's wrong or not, but that's always going to happen, as I found out, And they says, well, apart from that, I said, well, I would hate the thought of ever having to go back here to teach. Anyway, he says, sure, think about it, and maybe I'll chat to you again. Make a long story short, anyway, he ended up, he says, Bishop would take you, but and if you want to go to another seminary, still take you. I know that was big for somebody that, and I was nearly 18 years of age, that people had that sort of belief in you that you hadn't in yourself. That somebody wanted you. I'd be honest with you, I was probably a bit of a surprise to some of the boys that I went to seminary at all, and I've been honest about that, And but that's when when somebody who were in charge of the school, were saying
we
would like you. You're generally they're down to size, but people, when you get too big a notion of yourself, and that's keeps your feet in the ground. I always was very grateful to him then for teasing it out with me,
Yeah, it was a special moment,
It was a special moment in your life, I say. And then I got a letter from him and said, we're sending to St. Kieran's Kilkenny, if you're still going, sort of thing, That's where I went. And
because Eugene would have been ahead of you in that. So
Eugene went ahead, and he went to Hallows in Dublin.
Right.
And went for Salford diocese,
Yeah.
I don't know whether he even offered to Derry or not Derry at that time either, but again, I'm saying any more than myself, he wouldn't want to be back in the St. Column situation and that, But I must
maybe
say,
he was thinking Man United because he's...
Oh, they're Man United, right?
That was his angle on there.
Well, hopefully a wee bit more, but however. So I went to Kilkenny, and I must say it was a small seminary compared to the bigger seminaries. It was great because there were no junior house, senior houses in those places. And that meant you could be walking the fellas ready for ordination in your first year, and nobody made any difference to anybody in the place, And it was
nice.
lovely that way, and there were 20 of us started in our class that year, So I think we were 120 in the place altogether, But as the years went by, funny, you'd notice the numbers slacking, from what they were. I think there were 9 or 10 of us ordained, and the rest had left or whatever happened,
Did you find it a tough process?
Well, the first 20 years were tough because, the seminaries were still running the old gate way, and gradually, I suppose, as Vatican II, then, because that was just finished in 1965. I suppose that was one of the things that was happening that changed the church at that time. Left was sort of attractive, as something more than just the mere basic duties. There was obviously a church that wanted to be involved in people's lives and stuff like that. There was a wee attraction in that way, as well. You look back, it's easy to look back now and say why you're a priest. It's all sorts of things go through your head and silly things that affect you and affect your decision that you wouldn't be thinking twice about nowadays, because you're more confident, you'd hope anyway, and more, you can see to say why I'm still a priest rather than say why I became one, I completely got it's never any one thing. And the other good thing about going to the seminary for the 6 years was, well, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, you're not being ordained today, even though people who go to seminary at that time would really put you on the pedestal, and that was pressure that nobody needed. You had to up your mind. So that way, it was good to mix with fellas who were 4 and 5, nearly 6 years down the road when you went there, and give you a view of things and how they they struggled with it at times as well, you know. It wasn't all plain sailing, it wasn't about learning it, it was just a right place and adjusting right, you know. And the other part of it was in a seminary, you know, what, you know, people could turn around and say, you know, you're not adjusting here, or we don't think you're suited, like, and if it did, then that was part of the vocation as well, to be told. Like, you know, it was again like the affirmation of Father Fern, who was president of St. Collins. When I spoke with him, they also had it. You had to find the affirmation from them as well that you're okay, you know.
Yeah.
So it's not as simple, straightforward. You know, when you sit on the end of the roller and you come out a sausage the other side, you know. You know, like the program in McColgan's there some time ago. You know. So
yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
It's not
Paddy McGuinness.
It's not a production line that way. You know.
No.
There's a whole human
There's a
story
lot of,
in there. You know, and I think all the sensible, quiet fellas left. You know, and Kerry men and stuff like that were still around, still friends to this day.
Whenever you went there, was that you going by yourself?
By myself. Well, I sent another fellow with Mick McIver right enough. You know, Mick was one kind of a fellow like Boys Gillian said. They're two very different people coming from one part of the world, but that's how we were.
Oh, I see. You come out of the same household and not be the same.
Absolutely.
You know, well, that was it. So no, good years, and met up with a lot of people. And there was secondary school as well there. You know, when someone had to get involved in that, they were called prefects and stuff. You know, and therefore you had looked after them as well. You had to be, you know. In fact, I only was in the seminary sleeping, as I say. You're obviously there for class and all the rest of it, and for recreation and stuff like. But a lot of my time I spent actually with some of the great hurlers of Kilkenny over the subsequent years, you know, lads like that, you know, from the Brian Cody, the great manager, till all the other good hurlers. So we got to know all those people in a different way, and in fact then I tried to take a bit of football with them and things like that, you know, so no wonder they were never any good at football.
Getting lessons from the Kerry team.
So there you are, so that opened a bit, and you could get out on odd Sunday and stuff like that, you know, and you could here and there, you know, and actually a fella in our class, and he's still living, but I think his aim is not well with Alzheimer's at the moment. An odd Friday afternoon we could slip out and take a walk out to the mart and see who was about, you know, and things like that, you know. They were from a farm outside Kilkenny, so we went.
Took advantage?
Big advantage, and go out and actually met one or two people not time would know, you know, and I got a lift home to Aghyaran from the mart in Kilkenny one Friday, and then our transport then was Michael in the minibus actually, because we were a whole rig, it was like from the north, and it was maybe the Midlands, so he would come around the minibus and take us about home, you see, and do the travel around the country, and then take us back again as well. So that was the way it was to the very end. In fact, I even went back after I left and took a minibus and took the boys back myself a couple of times in subsequent years. You know.
I was actually doing a bit of research and I was reading about this minibus and about it was one of the All-Ireland finals.
There's two minibus, two loads. That's right, I am and Paddy. In fact, you know, you're interested in some of the stuff I've read. It was actually me reading Maeve Vinci. She had a book, I picked it up somewhere called the Leylig Bus. Took a wee scan over it and realised there was different people going around at home on the weekend and minibus different parts of the country. And I said, I must read this, see what the parallels and so on. And they're compared to our own travels up and down to college and different people. You know, so there's a great parallel, you know.
When you've lived through something like that.
I could identify with it, you know. And it was an enjoyable wee read, just, you know. And the problem thing about it is about people.
Yeah. Absolutely. So do you think then when you went to the likes of Kilkenny, the fact that you'd already been boarding in St. Columns, it helped, you know?
It did indeed help. I had been with Justin McPals and so on. The fact you played sport and that helped to adjust.
Connect you a lot to people.
Like, I mean, all I can say is the Tyrone Kerry rivalry started at 65.
Back then.
Myself, and a very funny one I'll tell you just about that is my father and mother and Brother Megan and Carmel left me down, you know, and to Kilkenny, and firstly they met with Kerry people, you see, you know. And we came back after Christmas. And Tim Lynch, who's still friendly with us in Florida, Tim said, my mother, that they couldn't understand what you Northerners were saying. And I said, you not believe the same chaplain ours at Christmas saying we couldn't understand what them Kerry people were saying. So the boys laughed and they still talk about it. We needed speech bubbles for the two of us for the first 2 months. We didn't understand a word each other was saying, you know.
Get the subtitles.
But we knew each other well on the pitch. We the non-verbal was strong.
Oh,
But that was the college.
Because I was going to say, did you find it difficult in Kilkenny because it's such a big hurling county that football takes a second?
Well, actually, my last year, my last months, I was asked to play in a Kilkenny County football final because it was over in April. I thought about it. I said, the dean, I'm going to say, now that Kilkenny County final, he said, I'm not too sure so why things you could be limping up the chapel at your ordination.
They knew you were in for a legend.
My goodness, but imagine if you had.
That's brilliant.
So there was a friendliness in the place. We've got people, lads from Newton Stewart and Desi Orlows and Derry was working in Kilkenny at the time, and his brother Eugene as well, and so I caught up with them, and this time we were able to get out on a Wednesday afternoon if you were free, if you had no football or nothing else on, you go out and maybe try your hand to golf and things like that, because fellas were going from there to America and they're going to England, so they did see the necessary for boys to do something to meet up with other fellas, and golf was always a gather priests on a meeting on Monday. It didn't matter if you had our 5 yards or you had our Fars Rory, it was you were there and you're out and you're by date and so on, and meeting up by friends and it could be lonely enough. I often thought since where's you're still home and you're in the known, like for somebody from Aghyaran or from the west of Ireland or wherever it may be, maybe there wasn't running water in the early years or electricity, that suddenly you're in the streets of San Francisco or you're in New York or you're in Miami, that was a big cultural shock, and to adjust to all that was a big challenge. Back at fellas and fellas left, I think they got lost in the whole world of materials, I suppose as well.
Swallowed up by it all.
So it's just something that people never think about, but it's something that I could witness and see with my own 2 eyes. A lot of good fellas have been at home and will still be in the job.
Yeah, amazing experience. Insight, definitely. So what about when you were ordained? What memories have you of that?
Well, I was ordained in Aghyaran. The year before that, we made a deacon and all that. And I was home, and my uncle, Father McCollum's brother and my mother's, and he was Parish Priest in Ballinasgreen for many years, Jipperstown. Actually, he was chairman of the Ulster Council even in the 1930s. Right. But he said to me, I'll be 50 years ordained next year, the year you're being ordained. He says, it would be nice if we had the two together, Mm-hmm. Well, I said, have it in Aghyaran. I said, well, you're in a better position to sort that out than me. At this time of day, and that have a different rank and different words of the bishop. So when I was ordained in Aghyaran and his Golden Jubilee.
Oh, lovely.
That was my
5th of June 71.
5th of June 71, exactly right. Mass in Aghyaran on Grand Day, and then the next day was just family and that after the Mass in Aghyaran up to Bundoran for a while. Up to Great Northern, and the summer was spent whatever we were doing, And next, this is very ironic. This next bit, Well, the first thing anyway, I remember being over with my father over to my Aunt Susan in Blackpool. I spent a couple of weeks over there, and I got back on the Saturday night, and again, Uncle rang me and said, Bishop's looking for you to see you on Monday morning. I think he wants you to go to Cranach because the PP's away on holidays and the curate has left and needs somebody to come there, So I met Bishop Farnham's, and they asked me to go to Cranach, which I spent 6 or 8 weeks, and it was that time of the year in October, I think it was nearly at this stage, I think it was October, so at the station's not up there, and still people look at me and say, how do you know them townlands up there? But when I come back in, down to Derry then, for the appointments, we in the first meeting we all were ordained, and that we were all in with them, and I was appointed as chaplain in his house and to teach a certain amount of RE in St. Columns.
Wow.
So
after you saying you didn't want to
vowing not to be near I said it was ironic.
Yeah.
And back then a priest fellow was a lovely man. He died of a heart attack at Halloween, and he had quite a few RE classes, so I took over most of them. You were doing GCSE stuff and all that at that stage, exam even then. So that was
so you had to go off then and teach
as well.
In St. Columns.
And our last year in Kilkenny, we did a specialised course on it,
right,
and the teaching practice and all that sort of stuff. Okay. So maybe that's why
you were trained.
Maybe they were thought that the bigger idea to make us buy to someone where the money was spent on them. But it's ironic. Now the next time I'm back over in Pleasant Quarter, I'm getting a timetable.
Oh my God! And how long did you spend then?
I spent that year. Yeah. Because then the men that were in charge of RE and the guys, the diocesan inspector, they said, hold on, the fire team of teachers in St. Colin Priest already, you're in there and you're not needed there, but there's schools up there in Craigan could do with a chaplain going up to them, So I ended up doing a chaplain at St. Cecilia's in Derry in my second year,
Right.
A bit of teaching in there
But
too.
teaching a wee bit. Right. And actually, I was planning to take a lot more class the next year once I got another place. And then the next thing was that Father Kevin McKenna was principal in the school in Carndona, appointed principal of the new community school, which was a whole new project down there at that time. And he came in to me one day and said, "Would you fancy being chaplain to the community school?" I got involved with that at year with we used to do school retreats around the days, you know, but here and there and done Carndon and that. So anyway, I said, well, if you sort that out, I'll be happy enough to move out of here, you know.
Yeah.
And so I got up to the last days, and I actually had got a timetable from St Cecilia's for the following year, and that evening he gave me the message. I said, get to Carndon before Tuesday.
You're out of here.
And that I spent 12 years in Carndon.
That was a good long stint there.
As chaplain, you know, and the first few years again took a GRE classes, but I don't think teaching a class all the time is the role of a chaplain.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people coming here and a lot of needs, you know, and teachers are talking with different pupils and and all the rest of it, and things you look for me doing myself. So I think there's more to this job, you know.
You wanted to step down
So
as
the
teaching.
classroom as much, and so fair to him, you know, when I was leaving Carndona, you know, after 12 years, I knew really half the stuff you're up to. In this place, you know, I mean, in a sense, like in terms of appreciation, I discovered what chaplain was about, I suppose, himself as well, you know.
Yeah.
But it must have been really difficult to be 12 years there and then be asked to move on when you've actually established
you know,
yourself.
I think, you know, it's probably better that than to go totally stale in a place, you know.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, there was a pastoral role really, and it actually, what happened was that there was two priests in Moville had died. A man was my own age, Tom Aghyaran, died as a young curate in it, and the man who replaced him died.
Oh my goodness.
And the PP was elderly, and I got a wee letter one week, Friday morning from Bishop Derry saying, you know, Moville, and you know, you're well here, and I think about your position, and maybe he'd only seen me the week before at dinner for confirmation, so I suppose I came into his head. And
There's the boy from Moville right there.
I'd like to talk to you. I rang him. I told Father McKenna and said, I got the letter, what do you think? But he says, you know, we are going out to Moville, like all the children had come from there to the school anyway, you know, and all the family. So again, my ramblings and different things that I got involved in.
You'd have met them before.
So I knew a lot of them for one reason or another. So I rang him and said, I'll talk to you shortly. But I can't this weekend. He said, I know rightly where you're going. He says, there's a cup final in Wembley on Saturday. so we agreed to meet on Monday. So the deal was done, and I lost 3 months of a good summer holidays at the Carndona school. I don't want to regret, but no, it was good to get in there and go. And so I was there just for 4 years, and then moved to Derry. I was administrator in Carnhill, you know, one of those in Europe, Chantal area at that stage. And it's all its own story as well, you know, from the troubles and still going on. So I was there for that till then I went to Bellaghy for 27 years after that.
And when you were in Carnhill, like what would be, you know, you said it was in the times of the troubles and that, what would be your, was worst or most difficult time that you put in? Or
Difficult time would be naturally when Pastor Gillespie he was parishioner and he was tied in the car and the bomb went off remotely and so I don't want to even go into detail.
No, I know,
absolutely. But it was a tough time, and you know, trying to support family and then the press around and you're caught going to that chapel with like a Sky News and telling people in the morning, you know, and things like that, and do the funeral and support the family, and that was
tough.
That was one of my. That was like when obviously people around here, things that happened before that as well, like you were part of his friends and neighbours and whatever else. So that was a hard one, you know.
You're kind of expected in your role to be strong, like you just.
Strong,
you're the strength for the community.
Have to take people through, you know. So that was one of the.
And I'm sure you had some fear as well if it had happened to
a
colleague.
And then you don't know who's going to take exception to what you say, and I mean I was challenged one time on even before that what I'd said, you know, on a Sunday homily, you know. But I wasn't challenged again. But like that, but you know, those things, you know, that you're open to.
Yeah.
You know, it's that, I mean, just that was how things were, and people were on edge, you know. And then I suppose the other memory was there was a man there, Johnny Walker, who was part of the Birmingham Six, and he was released then in 1991. That was a big homecoming for him to Carnhill, that
Brilliant.
So that was the other side of it, with that happening, And the wife, she was English actually from Nottingham. She used to go every week or so to see him, and now she hadn't the way that to come and go and out of the pit, So anyway, you could help people like that out, Telford through Vincent de Paul or people, So there was a lot of poverty around the place as well, like, and then schools used to get attacked, and back to the primary school was set on fire, like, and once about 2 12-year-olds as turned out, like, so it was about nearly £400,000 of damage done on that in 1990, So again, you're in the middle of all that. So that was
a lot
but a great parish to be in, because people were prepared to do things and have leadership in the parish and lay involvement. Like I must say, I didn't ask to leave Carnal, I can tell you, but not to be fair to it. I don't want it to be, wouldn't be fair to the place to just talk. You asked me about the difficulties. But it
was a great community.
And people will still be in touch with, and out walking this morning in Derry, and met a woman, and the great thing was she was able to name me after all the years. So
something like that people aren't going to forget though either. That
sense of parish they had, I thought it was good, and it was very. At home, I'd walk farther for the cows than you could around the parish, in Carnal.
But you must have done a fantastic job, because like the next one they gave you then was you until
Bellaghy,
until you retired.
Until I retired, yeah.
That's a beautiful part of the world up in Bellaghy.
It is. It's a good part of the world. I mean, I was shocked that I would have been sent anywhere at that stage. I didn't expect to become a PP, Actually, I was appointed to on my 48th birthday.
Right.
Wow, okay.
To Bellaghy. And that, and the PP was very well on that stage, and I was surprised he would have been changed to given, but anyway, I was told that's all agreed, not to worry about that from my point of view, It was a good parish, very strong Gaelic parish, of course, The big thing, so I spent many an argument about the chapel door, to say mass, but it's all good humour, but also got involved a bit with the club and that at the time, as well, and things like that, and they won a few Derry championships over those years and different things, and got the Club All Ireland and different bits and pieces, They were the first All Ireland club champions, Bellaghy were.
Right.
1972, so there you are.
Yeah, it rings a bell for you.
I know a lot of fellas around there would know them through my time in St. Columns, or fellas that I just knew for one reason or another, so never knew much about this, but I knew some people in it, And of course, it was a great time to go to Bellaghy. It was just only shortly afterwards, Seamus Heaney was announced as Nobel Award was announced at that point as well,
Yeah,
that's one place.
So it was like a home from home, really, then for you,
a lot of that stuff. It became home, over the years, I must say.
You used to always joke about whenever Tyrone played Derry that you wanted the team in white and red to win.
Well, there's a lot of things been told about me here. Thank God. Forgot. Yes, right.
Allegedly.
Oh no, we put it in the Bolton. You put the Tyrone on the one side of the thing, and the ball on the other, Derry on the other side. And I say, good luck to the team in red and white. I mean, it was all part of the banter and the crack, But then it came to the All Ireland in 03, of course,
Yeah.
So anyway, Sunday I was. Went off after Mass to play golf in Oma for fundraiser, When we were rained off it, and then I made a bit duck to the clubhouse, and a couple of Oma boys said, Dolan, what did you say in Bellaghy today? You'll not be there next week. In fact, one of them was quoted it on that night on the Voice Pop outside Croke Park.
Right.
But if I could, I never spoke much about football at the altar. If I couldn't say it in one sentence, I didn't go into the second, or didn't at all. But I said I went on my mass as far as the sermon and the prayers of faith for the announcements. I was walking back to the altar. At the time, Canon was injured at the time, you see. So I scratched my head and I went back to the thing and I said, I'm a bit confused today. I don't know whether to pray to God or for God. And I walked back into the altar. So that's
brilliant.
Very good.
That was probably my most memorable speak. But now and then, the following Saturday night, like you talk about the opposition, a fella that always be good friends with, I was speaking to him on the phone this morning not long ago, and the fella Lawrence Diamond, who actually was in college with Brendan, Manchester, the two of them would have kicked the ball about there and then come home and played against each other when they were playing their own. Right. But Lawrence had a boy arranged, he was in charge of the choir, so after the communion on the Saturday night when I was finishing Mass, they played the Mountains of Pomeroy. To celebrate Tyrone. It's always those memories that sustain you.
It's a beautiful song.
And then you were talking earlier about difficult, I suppose, and even today's news still connects it, the death of Sean Brown. That's something that is always gives me
Oh, do you? Yeah.
gives me goose pimples. Because when I spoke to Sean, with the last All Ireland he was at, I drove him and Jim McKeever and Tom Scullion and Raw and another fellow, Sean Donner, took a train trip from Portadown to Belfast, and we came back home. We drove up the Aghyaran Road, and all the rest was here around us, and that was Sean's last All Ireland. Remember that? And he was a lovely man every way, like, and to think of what happened to him, and again, trying to carry the funeral, trying to carry family, support people, like it was. And even to this day, I've gone up there to Belfast to the court at Hammer tables,
Yeah.
But
Because they're dealing with that day in, day out, like that hasn't been resolved for them.
Yeah, for them it was no one. The whole community and that, it was just awful.
Now one thing can spin 180 on you
in
a matter of seconds.
And there's the Browns okay, but there are a lot of other people, and they would be aware of that too. They're not just their own battle, but they're fighting for a lot of other people as well.
Yeah.
Who have never got the answers, or never got the satisfaction, or whatever happened to them, or why this happened or not, So, they're certainly not letting go easy. But it was just a horrific thing. Of all the people, the innocent people like that you could think of in this world.
Yeah.
Sean was just a man of integrity.
Yeah. As you said, like it happened to a lot of people.
I did
just
as well.
Innocent.
I did surely, and even so, authority might criticise people because they're breaking the law, but you don't. If you're criticising people, you don't stoop to, as they would say it, to the same level as them and say, well, we can do that because he did this. That's not really.
No.
But that Sean Brown, not in that category, is not just for whatever reason. There would have been tension in Bellaghy and other ways, of course, with marching and protests and so on. But that wasn't anything. He certainly was not part of all that in any way or other.
It's horrendous what people have to go through.
I did indeed. So I know it's not about me or that as I talk about, but just to think of the family and just the horrible death they had been dragged away and everything. I'll leave it at that. But
oh no, it's tough. But it just shows your resolve as a priest and everything that you've gone through. Like it's
she carries that emotion as well, and the pain, and you can see the pain in the people.
The pain and no matter what the situation is, when you're dealing with grief, it awakens your own grief at times as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then from Parish Priest becoming Monsignor. Can you tell us a bit about that?
I don't know. I think it's called a mystery.
Was it the 7 mysteries? Is that
mystery, that one? Because when the new bishop came in, the vicar general is what people are kind of advisor or helper or whatever description you would have. Lieutenants or whatever else. People think you'd apply far more importance to you than you might to yourself. So that and that was that, and then 2014 now, and then 2 years later. The bishop rang me one day and said, "Hello, Monsignor Dolan." Because I don't know, I suppose he had some instigation in that. And again, a wee bit of that would have been, when bishop wasn't available, then you could step in and sort of do the ceremonial or whatever it might be, Yeah. And so we did that, and different times. But I never, the good thing with Bellaghy, I'll tell you, I suppose really the fear I had and was, that or somebody sticking up on a pedestal that would distance you from your parishioners.
Yeah.
And that I didn't want any manner of means, and I suppose they're happier for me than maybe I was for me, and friends and that, and nice to be surely thought of that way, but thankfully that didn't make any difference. They saw Father Andy or Father Dolan, I never called me Monsignor in Bellaghy. Never got around to it. We said we're not calling you Monsignor, we're calling you Father Andy far too long, so we're not changing. That suits me
too hard to change.
Very well, And then of course went down then to Faughan Bay, and now I get nothing else but Monsignor, and I kind of wonder who they're talking about sometimes.
You're kind of difficult to adjust it.
That because we're both Andy Dolan, of course, but I had a phone call one day from Father Mick Doherty, and he rang me up, but obviously he thought he had rang you whenever he had rang through, so on his phone now, you're Monsignor and I'm Mon Junior.
He said, Mickey said?
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
Well, Mon Junior Dolan, that's me.
Oh, that's I was involved in a lot of meetings and different things, and maybe being invited to this or that, But for me, still my basic work was the parish. So there for 2 years before I retired, I gave up the Vicar General thing as well because I wanted to spend my last couple of years just hiding the dead bodies in Bellaghy. But actually then COVID came, so that blew all that anyway. So I never really caught up with myself. But then I retired. I had a heart attack way back in 05, which was so then realised, off a good wee while because I got nothing done, just But I realised, like, that once you're there, people have and not sure enough, it's not complaining about it. They expect you to deliver, So when I came to 75, the age to retire, I said, if I stay on any longer, people still expect me to be the same fitness, the same able to meet the same demands, and that's not fair to them either.
Yeah, I feel like Gilmore would probably say the same. That since he's retired, but he feels like he doesn't have that.
You don't have it, just not. Nobody does. Like, you do your best, but then you go trying to cope with situations, in the middle of that too. Like, and you don't need to have as many sleepless nights,
No, exactly.
The age catches up with everybody. Just
there's
only so much you can actually physically give. So, how are you finding life in retirement since September 22?
It's very different in so many ways, but I suppose I'm lucky that I'm still reasonably fit, and I suppose the best way to sum it up is I went back to Bellaghy, to stand in, maybe a month or 6 weeks after I left. The PP went away for a break, whatever, and I didn't know how I'm going to start this evening, to Mass. So I said I would like to introduce myself this evening to you. Actually, I'm all looking at each other and saying, is he going on or already, And I said, actually, I know there's a lot of stock phrases you could use, and I says, actually, no, I tried to think of something different. Actually, I'm from the recycling centre. So
I got a laugh.
Reassured them. I know they get on my mask, not it, because just how you just to get started again. There's like a lot of things, and that was it. But so in many ways, I go help fellas out who need me and so on. We're around quite a few parishes, and then at the same time where I'm living, if not anywhere else, I do masses at the weekend, maybe a Saturday evening and Sunday morning one. And then I've been involved in schools there and bits and pieces, and just trying to connect with people but it's very hard at this stage to retain names and that when you're not involved in the everyday business of people's lives. You're just and you meet people at Tabardone and say hello, or you meet them and say, I'm Johnny McLaughlin, whatever it is, but it's very hard to remember then Johnny McLaughlin from Johnny Doherty, things like that,
when you've met so many people
over the years, I think the hard drive's filled, so that's
I might be using that one myself.
So that's the thing about, the people are friendly and they're good and they're kind, but I keep it as different things, like that. I keep doing a bit of walking and stuff,
Keep yourself active.
So you're keeping busy anyway.
Busy as I want, in many ways, at least it's grand,
Not too stressful.
The good thing about it, no governors meetings, no decisions to make, don't. In fact, the doorbell seldom ever rings. The house phone seldom ever rings. And that's music to the ears.
Peace at last. Peace
at the last. That way, because again, that thing to cope and stay on top of things, But so that's how it is. I'm in one day, whatever, maybe last Christmas or the Christmas before, it says, it's lovely when here's a mass. I don't have to worry who's collecting, who's singing, who's reading rings. I just feel like one of the congregation. So
that's nice to do that then.
I know, and then the other part of it, when you're in my last year or two, at least anyway, in Bellaghy, you go to a meeting or whatever it was, you look around, you're always the oldest in the room, So,
it's time to get out.
Time to get out, at that point is right.
Well, you didn't find yourself over in Rome recently, for the Pope Francis passing?
Actually, I was in Lourdes last week, and a very good experience with the National Pilgrimage Trust, where there are young people in the group, that group, going around sort of 12 to 18 or so, but different needs, They wouldn't have been wheelchairs there, but they had a lot of other needs, and so on. On that, I found a lovely week just to be with them and watch the young people who were looking after them as well. Everybody had two people looking after them, and the leadership and all that. So not just when I was with Donegal group, and then there were Derry groups, or groups from all over the country, and nearly 1,000 there, and that was that was a good experience.
Lovely.
I'd say the joy you brought to those people.
The joy they bring to you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
Because,
Yeah.
I mean, they started off like a bud and they just opened out. They never were away from their parents or where their carers were before. They're now in a bus, they're in a plane. There's, you know, and they're now people that have met all right on one day, you know, just get to know you, and suddenly like they are in people's charge, you know, and they're in a big basilica at some of the days for big masses and stuff like that. And they enjoyed
Big
the
crowds
music,
and
the
everything.
big crowds and that.
Yeah.
And then you know, but then other days, or a couple of days, we had mass out in the grass, you know, just
lovely.
probably
Yeah.
just get
Magical.
close to the action. It was good for them and good for me, I tell you.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And there was no sort of the bud at the start of the week had flowered by the end of the week, you know,
that's lovely.
and the feedback from parents not to come back has been
Yeah.
positive. That was my first time ever on, so I can say I saw lures in different times before, but I saw it through different lenses last week.
Yeah. So you're still having first time experiences.
Still first time
Yeah,
at this
exactly.
time in life,
In retirement. So
it is,
that's amazing.
a
Yeah.
girl in the parish asked me about going to it, you know.
Yeah. It's lovely.
I had that wee day, but going away in a big diocesan pilgrimage that didn't, to be fair, really appeal that much to me, you know, because there's caught with all the stuff that's going, you know, so we could do things at our own pace.
Yeah.
You had a great experience, Claire, didn't you, in your pilgrimage to Loch Derry?
I did. I did Loch Derry myself and Breach McGrath, and I did struggle with the praying at night time and trying to stay awake. And
Hunger and lack of sleep.
oh my goodness, it was a
struggle.
struggle, and I remember kept getting up because I was like half sleeping when I was.
Head hitting the seat.
Yeah.
Well, my last time in Lord Derry was I took 55 young ones from Carndonagh Community School
Right.
on the pilgrimage of late 70s, because you know the exams start there, and
Yeah.
you know, fourth years now are away, you know, school when the exams are on. I just sent out that if anybody was interested in Lord Derry, let me know.
55.
55 of them that year went,
Wow.
Phyllis and Gears, and they flew around the place. But the first year there, they got so wet, but they managed to pick up wild clothes with the place.
Yeah.
And I said, oh God, I wonder what the prayers say with this crowd when they finish, because there were about 110 odd, and I'd half of them, you know,
Yeah.
that particular weekend. Oh God, and on the morning or evening, you canonise them, or great. That's not the station.
I'm sure they're probably still talking about that memory to this day.
absolutely.
I'd meet them, so a few of them obviously now and again, you know, here and there, and they say, I went back to Lord Derry, you know,
Yeah.
things like that, you know. So
I've never made it back, mind you.
well, they did, but they were young.
Yet.
They were,
Not yet,
They
yet.
were 16 or 17
Yeah.
years of age, and they were able to fly, you know, when they were dragging me all over the place at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh God.
I was there on my own, like, God, you could shiver now, you think about it. Like, when
Yeah.
I was taking 55 somewhere now, you'd be half a 3 cut for
Oh
paper.
yeah, absolutely.
And you'd another busload of minders. So,
Yeah.
all
It's the
of
paperwork to go anywhere these
very
days.
true.
Oh, what did you think of the Pope Francis? Because he was, by all accounts,
Pope Francis was well, I don't have my phone with me. I could show you a very good photograph. It's in the car. But,
oh, sure,
Yeah,
give us
we'll see it
that.
after.
We'll see it after.
Yeah.
shaking hands with him
Lovely.
in Rome.
Wow.
He was very modest.
Lovely man, with great tight grip, was too good grip, you know,
Yeah.
lovely that way. Good warmth about him. Actually, at the moment, I'm reading a book called Hope, his own book on his life,
Right.
and just is really looking back on life in Argentina and that, you know, and sort of the family people moving from Italy to Argentina and back and that sort of stuff, and you know, the poverty and of course the repression and that was in Argentina in the early days. And all those things, like, but then again, just a natural, you know, we're talking about our neighbours or friends or school friends, all of that, you know, and I talk about, you know, not knowing people, but say, but throw a ball and take out young people and they're friends in no time, you know.
Yeah.
So it's very normal.
Simple things.
Yeah.
There's a good normality about it. I thought that was, and thought about that. I know, but I read the book, that's what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
Somebody just had a normal upbringing like the
Yeah.
rest of us. There was nothing luxurious about it,
No.
but there was a sense of security and happiness about it, you know. And so that's probably, if you're talking about Aghyaran I got growing up, I mean, you had that sense of security about you and things
It's
like
instilled in you.
and you know, and young people really maybe today is not as assured of that, you know.
No. True.
So
Yeah.
those so that's what comes across in his own book in a way. It's coming out of an assured sort of background, you know.
Yeah, it was kind of like said earlier, everybody was pitching in, and that ethic was just instilled in you from such a young age. And it's not the same now.
No. I say, like, great luxuries have become now so essential.
Yeah.
I know, absolutely. And then how would you find, like, you know, for now with regards to Catholicism and the modern technology and the youth of today, like, to bring them closer or to get more of the youth into Mass? And there's great challenges there.
It always has been, actually,
Yeah.
you know, because I suppose really, you know, until you settle down, right, I think, you know, and say, you know, what have I got to hand on to my kids?
Yeah.
Well, then you either become serious about your faith or you don't.
Yeah.
You know, when you see the value of it, you know, and so on. So it takes a while. I mean, it's not, you know, it's like anything, you know, there's highs and lows, you know, in it, and I suppose there's questions. And so you question about things to the way they raise your last. Like, I mean, it's not that simple. But today, with I say, with modern communication, and certainly something like Pope Francis, you know, gives religion a good name.
Yeah.
Sadly, other things, like, I suppose, the whole. But I mean, people say today, you know, the abuse crisis, you know, that I was saying earlier, like, referring to the numbers, even in seminary in the middle 60s, like, we're beginning to drift anyway. You know, that so that, you know, faith was, I suppose, again, faith has been challenged more and more in every way, whether it's a conversation or whether it's you know, writings or whatever other way that, you know, faith is challenged by people anyway, and there's always that element of faith, that there's always questions, you know,
about it,
what else is out there, if anything. You know, that's sense as well, you know, and I suppose so it presents its own challenges. I suppose at the same time, you know, maybe I could put it this way, you know, if I believed what some people think the church is about, I wouldn't be on it either.
Yeah.
You know,
Very true.
Yeah, it's true, actually, because everybody has their own concept
their own
of
notion,
what,
concept, you know, but never really stop to think, what exactly is this about, you know, because, you know, and it becomes fashionable as well, like, to, you know, to reject religion, you know, and if you ask somebody why you don't go to chapel, like, they couldn't give you any great valid reason, not that you would challenge somebody like that, I mean, but when this question comes up where people volunteer their comments, like, you know, there's no logic to why. I suppose
They don't go,
away you go, I suppose, somewhere because you're attracted, there's something there. And I mean, I suppose if you've been through difficulties in life, like, I mean, you know, I always say the very thing that's challenged, the thing you hang on to with the fingernails. Like a big my own experience, like, that, you know, your faith can be challenged very deeply, but, you know, it's still the thing that kind of keeps you hanging on there.
Yeah. So true.
So it's not a black and white. It's not about certainties.
Yeah.
Not at all.
But nothing in life is, you know,
Nothing in
isn't
life
it?
is about it, you know.
Yeah.
But I say, always for some reason or other, you know, it comes up with something for you. But I suppose, like, Pope Francis, like, has definitely given religion a good name. Or a religious person has given it a good name himself. You know, and it's not been by being holier than thou either, you know. You know, that, and I suppose again in many ways, like, religion for so long was do's and don'ts, you know, and things like that. But I mean, I say, you know, and actually with our faith and post Christianity should be done anyway. I suppose it's, you know, we're living in a world today that says, you know, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
It's
not what do I bring to the table.
Yeah.
Am I getting paid to go here? That's everybody's looking for money for everything.
If whatever it is, well, no, whatever it is, so I mean, that way, like the Christian, you know,
they're not forgiven back. They're not forgiven.
Or to be, you know, has to say, so that, you know, and I mean, if you even taking a scripture, like, where you're, whatever way you're gifted, and you look at even the characters and even the lives of the saints or and the apostle, like, you're not, you know, when talk about confirmation, I guess, you're never given God never gave a gift to anybody for themselves. It's always meant to be shared.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're not sharing it.
Yeah, that's so true.
I felt like in our generation, like, you were for Mass, you're going to Mass.
Yeah,
that was installed in you, like, that's what you had to do. You had to Mass, but now I think it's why do I have to go to Mass? Why would I be doing what's
more
that?
That's where I think, you know, I suppose today, I suppose we try to recognise what are our real needs, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, we try all. I mean, there's all those things have been tried now, whether it's the drink, a dope, or some other things, you know, and they're not bringing any more happiness to people's lives or contentment, you know. That's, I'm not saying faith has to be a filler in. I think the first thing maybe people need to believe in is not God, but in themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a very important thing, to have self belief, you know, because if it's things we don't like or somebody criticises, like, I mean, I always think of criticism, but like I hold up a blank page to you, it's grand, but I put a black dot in the middle of it, that's all you see. And that's all we hear is a criticism. We don't hear anything else, you know.
Yeah, you don't hear the good things,
hear the good things, you know, and celebrate the good things, you know.
Yeah.
Like a teaching, like you could have a fantastic day, and one thing, all it takes is one thing.
One thing,
in 1 minute.
Anything, you know, and
That's what you think about.
So I was saying about my own experience of, you know, of discussing what I might do, like, and to from me to nearly believe in you, like, was a kind of a, you know, never dog you know, because encourage them to believe in yourself, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which would be
and I think too for parents as one challenges too, that there's this kind of, it's nearly crazy really too when you think about that your children are going here, they're going, you like to the Gaelic training, the soccer training, the stuff to do swimming, they do, and it's such a busy schedule that there is no day off. We're not going anywhere. Do you know that? And
that eats into family life.
It doesn't
all
it?
sorts of things, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people are not recognising.
I think it's probably one of the good things that came out of COVID, that actually got people to stop and think.
And
relax.
relax.
To think is right, you know.
And spend
and
time.
Actually, a lot of people did church crawls during COVID, mass here, mass there, you know, so many different places. I felt very dull after COVID because people did Father so and so in Cork were a good preacher, and Father so and so played to get music. Somebody else sang. God, I was very dull. But again, you know, but I felt a lot of people did clue in to whatever was going on, and I mean the whole webcam thing, which we had for a few years before that, like, which was great for families who were away from home to connect with whatever was going on at home, you know, and all those things. Like, and
I know my mother could watch one mass, and when it's ended she could tune into the next mass.
I called it church crawl, you know.
Church crawl.
But it was there, and I suppose it was a need, you know, as well, that was being met, and faith was meeting that need, you know. And I think, you know, and maybe as you say about the rushing and around and so on, you know, we're not taking time when you're, you know, the hardest people to please, I say, is those who do not know what they want.
That's very true, actually.
It's a bit of that, you know, ones as well, you know. You know, and therefore, you know, if you're not too sure what you want, but then religion mightn't answer it either.
Yeah,
definitely. So I remember one time there was a cartoon called The Gummy Bears. Don't know if you remember it, Claire. It used to be on Sunday mornings.
Oh yeah.
And it was always on when mass was on.
Yes.
And I remember on that sofa, well, probably an older version of a sofa in there, like, but I remember I hid under the blanket and stayed so still that they went to mass without me and didn't realise until they were there. But that was like the 9 o'clock.
Jesus was lost at home instead of the temple.
Well, as soon as they came home and they realised I had missed, they sent me to the 11 o'clock mass then. It was win-win for me. So
at least anyway, like,
at least you got to see your cartoon.
They're passing on their own conviction, which is a very important thing as well.
Yeah,
definitely.
So let's get back to maybe GAA and Aghyaran.
I would know nothing about it.
Big part of your life, I would say.
The formation and the stories as a player of Aghyaran.
Well, you got again, just at that time of your life, like, and you were starting taking interest in the outside world. For me, when it happened in 1956, I would have been 8 or 9, you know, depending what time of the year that was. And, you know, also Tyrone had been doing well.
Yeah.
You know, they were won the Ulster Championship that year and things like that. And they won the Melrose Minors in the late 40s, that, you know. And actually, you know, the top of GA, there was a bus went from Aghyaran in 1948 to Crow Park.
Wow. You know,
the Tyrone Miners were in All Ireland. None of them had tickets. At that time you could climb the wall to get in and all the rest of it. And Tyrone won the Minor of Ireland, and I think there was Cavan played Mayo and the same day, like, so there was always that interest in it, you know. I think maybe we tried a time or two, and maybe in a couple of spots in the parish, maybe one or two fellas might have played elsewhere. Anyway, it was I think probably you've heard some of this already anyway. The club was started one night after sort of cleaning the graveyard in Aghyaran and chatting, and boys said, why not have a go at it? So I mean, it started in 56, and as far as I remember, I look now, you know, at all the games and all these things you have at Easter, like what do you call these wee camps and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Like the only camp we had, we were standing behind the goals, kicking the ball back, and the Willie going further than the ball, you know.
Yeah.
There was a nice feeling down in the field in the Bray in Aghyaran, like, you know. And that's where I grew up. And I mean, I suppose that time, the only sort of source of information you had would have been the Sunday Press, Sunday Independent, Michael O'Hare in the radio, you know, very important part of Sunday afternoon after Dinjo taking the floor for dancing, like. So that was all part of it. So it was all Sunday afternoon games, or Saturday nights and all. So gradually your interest grew in it. You heard about players, you read about them. I mean, you were asking earlier, Jenny, I would have followed hurling from a very early age.
Right.
And I remember, in fact, that surprised me, the boys, that I could remember who played for Kilkenny in '59 or something like that, you know. But that different people would have the same. All the lads around would have been the same. And we would chat about the school, of course. I mean, we got more bother chatting about football on Monday or Sunday morning, about matches that we listened to on the Sunday afternoon. You know, we mentioned Patsy Conner, for example, earlier, and Charlie and people like that, and some of the Devines as well, of course, Colin and Gerald were my contemporaries, among others. And that, and then Mrs. O'Connor, we were talking about earlier, she, you know, sports in Aghyaran, there was a fancy dress parade, and she dressed up, got away with white shirts and shorts on them or something or other, and paper red hands on them, as its own team had won the Ulster Championship, and they won the fancy dress. So I mean, wow, and from the school over here, that, you know, and all they were doing was taking a lookalike photographs from the paper, because they wouldn't know what one of the players looked like.
Yeah. So she had a sense of humour.
Oh, she had more than a sense of humour. but fair dues, like, so I mean, those are all the, you know, all the wee components that sort of you know,
propelled everything
things forward. But I mean, it took a long time for the club to take off, really. Like, you know, there was, I don't know what, you know, there was no great support for it for a long time. Like, there was not.
Because before that, as far as I know, it was all the different schools had their own teams.
Well, then that happened then. Schools then, once I could go and Carrie Cohan played Corgray or played Tullycar or Ballymungan. That was in the when it was in the Bray field there at the chapel. You know, those would happen our time, all right, you know. Under 15s, if we played the first competitive football, you know. So there was kind of enough for us for that stage. But the team was still playing, you know, on started. The first game would have been Aghyaran versus Castleberry in a challenge match, and then there was other challenges, and you know, Aghyaran I would have been playing with again them different teams. Those memories are kind of vague to me, but I remember that. And then there have been sports and teams that have come with 7-a-sides, and there have been no row and fights. And as carried on.
None to do you know.
Not one thing, I wasn't there. And then we on the 15s, and down you had Arnie, you had like Patrick, you had Devine, you had Stewart, Castleberry. So I mean that. But things along, and then the minors, the next on the teens, then would be the next sort of team you could play for, and sometimes some of us were called on just to fill a jersey, like there was off days, Sundays there wasn't 15 to play for Aghyaran seniors, you know. So
it's hard to think when you look at it now, and
I mean, you can't imagine and people forget the humble beginnings, and indeed, you know, one man that maybe in many ways kept it going. I'm sure his name has come up as well as Jimmy Owens. You know, he was the referee, he was the delegate to the own Western Board, he wrote the team sheet in Irish, you know, all those things that had to be done, and picked the team as well. So I mean, so that kind of person, you know, you needed always needed somebody like that, I suppose, to keep things running. Keep it going, you know, and those. And the team would put up on the wall on a sheet of paper and a stone holding it down for Sunday morning if there was a team to go up, you know. So those are the sort of vague memories I have of it, you know. And then the older ones now, it's like maybe Eugene and Michael and Thomas eventually were playing on, you know. And that's what I know.
And you're talking like there's no changing facility. Like I had read somewhere like you're like behind a ditch, everybody was getting ready.
Behind a ditch, and you know, the nearest you got to washing was dipping your head in the well behind the goals to take a drink out of it, you know. And I mean, it's night like me could be leaving your clothes up and sitting on the side of the field up there, and you come back and they're all wet with the dew. And I mean, that's and when we trained up the hill all the time. Yeah. But I mean, it was.
So your mother did some giving out?
No, she didn't. But she was very fond of it. She was
want you to play.
Not one bursting out of the club. One thing for sure. No. When you went to end up playing Aghyaran Priest, you go home with a bank of turf on your togs, you know. But that all developed, and then Aghyaran got promoted in 1962. The first game they won was against Tillich. They got ahead. Jimmy Owens was referee, and they got ahead maybe 10 man for 15 at the second half, and he blew the whistle. And that is true. I don't know if that's on record anywhere, but that's how it happened. I know.
I did read there was something controversial about it, but I didn't hear
that sent a shockwave to his wrong. But anyway,
that was 6 years, wasn't it, before they had actually won that first?
At least 4 to 5 years anyway. Early 60s before that. In 62, Aghyaran got promoted as a junior into intermediate football.
Wow.
And Aghyaran have never been back in juniors since 1962.
Wow.
That's 63 years ago now. They've been playing at least a level above the bottom, And
but it took great leadership from people like you said, Jimmy Owens, to get to that, and your brother.
Then other people, Sean McGoldrick and people like that, and then both the great Aghyaran was the sort of the one big thing he played with Ornery, maybe played with some of the boys with Bellaghy. Other fellas that had a bit of experience of it, but enough to keep it going, in one way or other. But anyway, we were promoted then in 1965 to senior football. Won the West Tyrone League undefeated, because West and East that time you just played the West Tyrone, you didn't play all county at that stage.
All right.
So it was like travel wise that it was made more sense.
And so on, every in a van. And then we only stayed a year or so in senior football at that stage. Then we went back down, and then in 69 we got promoted again, won the West Tyrone League and got beaten in the intermediate semi-final. And next year was Division 2 Aghyaran, and they went straight to Division 1 then. And we were runners up in 1972 in the All County League, and we gave Ardbow a 2-goal lead, and they beat us by a point or two in the championship, and won the championship. So we were up there with that, and then I suppose Brennan's death, in 73 knocked the bottom half. That was a big setback, and it put back in so many different ways, like without elaborating on that. Still come back, and that resilience was now in it, and the club had its identity, and Aghyaran, by the way, I think one of the good things that actually that club did for Aghyaran, give Aghyaran an identity of his own right,
Absolutely.
Where's Aghyaran,
When people talk about Aghyaran, they'll still talk about Brendan Dolan and how fantastic a footballer he was.
No. It was useful.
He was useful.
But then again, I suppose he was in the St. Columns team and won the Hogan Cup in 1965, full back on that, you see, and then Drone Minor the year before. And he was the first Aghyaran man that played with Tyrone.
Right. And
so we had that, and then he would have been involved in the vocationals. Martin Devine would have played under him in vocationals. Him and Art McRae were looking after that, and Drone won all Ireland vocationals in 70 or whatever year it was, So he went to coaching a good bit at that stage, And actually, even I was selling Kilkenny, so I knew him through a course up in Gormerstown. The hurdlers people were there as well, So I used to get a slagging about that. And someone would go up to his funeral, but that, I was there. But not alone that, like a footballer, but he also. He was coaching football at the same time as well, so a lot to give. So,
like whenever I went to as a pupil to St. Coleman's, Declan Forbes would have been my PE teacher. So as soon as he was like, Dolan, you must be like something to Brendan Dolan, and then he would go off talking about how brilliant Brendan was.
They talked together. I got into basketball as well.
Oh yeah.
And played goals for Savannah United soccer. Because the girl showed me a photo of Savannah
United.
Right. Savannah United team, and there he was along with her father. She was now down teaching in Vaughan Vale or one of the schools,
Did read somewhere the boys from Aghyaran at that time went and played a lot of basketball around Castledare at one point.
But he was playing an Ulster basketball with Savannah Zenits or whatever they were called, So they went to sport of all kind. Him and me would have tried to golf together in Barnescourt even then,
Cormac McAnallen would have been a great basketball player.
That's right.
In his day as well, like.
Dedicated to it, and that's what's important, and I suppose again through Colin and the coaching and that, and sport again, you need that self-belief into what you're at.
Yeah.
So true.
And then I suppose his last big game was Ulster final in 72. And then one of the last games around players again, Donegal, who were also champions in and home in the league, And that was near the last memory of county, because he died then in January, and then the difficulty for ourselves was starting to go out and train and play again. It was heavy going.
How are you supposed to pick yourself up again?
Pick yourself up again. But again, you need people around you can't do it.
Yeah,
No.
no, never.
Can't.
Takes the community, yeah.
It does.
You must have some great memories. There was 4 of you brothers all played together.
Aye, that's right. Aye. Well, it was country club, but not, I mean, a few families did make it up. Like if you take, Devine's, Connolly's,
Yeah.
Michelle's, McHugh's, like there's Big Mick again, George and Tom, and them. There was at least 3 of them playing. So you had that kind of numbers, like.
Yeah.
And they
From
say
all
you're
different
often
families.
you're fiercer whenever you're in the same team defending your own brother. If somebody goes in with a rough shoulder,
Well,
retribution.
Well, I mean, you the thing is, whatever you're doing, it's just for the team anyway. And that's
Yeah,
what you have to do,
exactly.
your best.
Yeah. So what was your best memory of playing for Aghyaran I in the time?
Well, one of them would be Mark Brinkman Wigan, the championship in '72, and he didn't score 11 points against me.
He did score 11, no?
He scored that in an Ulster final, didn't he, against Armagh?
Yeah.
That was 18 years old. I like to be on the field with good footballers, play with people, and I'm still very respectful of good football. I love watching good football, as long as I'm not playing again. I still like to go just and watch good players, like in Brinkman Wigan.
Outstanding player, yeah.
Different, But my biggest memory would be, and I suppose it has been recorded before, like the day I wasn't playing.
The day you weren't playing? Oh,
I
no.
wasn't playing that now.
Oh, no.
I'll qualify that a bit now. It was Aghyaran played Carrickmore 72, leading by 2 points. And one of Carrickmore's flyers going through, and nobody, as I would say, was interviewing him. And he was heading for the goal, and Aaron Michael got us, was up the field, the top of the field, in Aghyaran, the old pitch, and shouted out and where blank as our Andy. And I wasn't playing, I was in Lourdes.
Oh, Jesus.
Literally, Jesus, yes.
So that was.
They remember that.
if that's highlight when you're not playing. That's the news I come back. I know I should have been but you could enjoy it. In fact, what the highlight really for football for me is now, is meeting fellas you played against, and you laughed back at some of the things you did or didn't do, or cracks that happened, or the games, or how they finished up, or people you remember, you want to talk about that's part of the, you might say, the fruit of playing. I remember going to an old guy there, Dan McDermott, who was done a man, and Dan was arguing black for white, but he died anyway down in Claudia, and he's right in his daughter's house, and he had 2 sons who were playing at our time, and opposition could be sharp enough, but anyway, I went to his wake and sympathised with Ned and Chipper, as they're called, and then he says, I'd like to pay a tribute to your father. I didn't know what was coming. He says, he scored more with the flag and you dared with the ball. So, I mean, they say they enjoyed that, and they told that over and over again, So that's the kind of freedom you have with each other.
Yeah.
But whatever the opposition, what I always say, enemy for an hour, friends for a lifetime when you meet up,
Oh yeah, because I think about your Michael that I've read, hard hitting on the pitch, determination to win, but as soon as that whistle blew, best of friends,
that's it.
shaking
Meet
hands.
people. Leave it on the pitch.
Yeah.
That's the attitude.
Best way to be.
Oh, aye. And I suppose in the seminary football was tough. You see, you were playing with boys all over the country. You had to learn to look after yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, aye.
And then again, when you were walking off, you could be sitting beside him for the meal being done. You could be sitting beside him in the chapel. You could be on the same desk on the lecture hall.
Yeah.
So you couldn't afford to take a fight off the pitch.
No.
Not a bit like you have to let it go there
Yeah,
and then.
aye, there and then, and walk off chatting to each other. Which surprised some at times.
And so then what would you have said, that's your happiest memories, what would you say has been your greatest challenges? I know we kind of touched on one before, but...
Well, I suppose,
the loss of your,
loss in family, it was
I'd imagine.
a big thing,
Big,
and Brandon at 26, like a Michael at 46, like that was, those were big hits, very big hits, and they're timeless.
Yeah. When you talk about the memories you have of all your family being there together, and then when they're not there,
it's first sort of break, in the first break, come like, and we were Brandon had like Irish twins to talk about, we were 17 months of age, I remember a big fella from the Second Hour time, like, came in and standing over and putting their arm around me at the grave, you know, and said, we wouldn't really know one of you without knowing the other.
Oh, God, yeah.
That kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, it was the same for the rest of the family, like we were close, outfit right enough, you know, no question about that. So that, and that, so coping with that, you know, and say, meeting other people, even then the loss of friends as well, like, and people like, and the tragedy like McHugh and Patrick Shannon and other young fellas around too got caught up in the troubles and all that loss, like, you know, when your neighbour is your friend, you know, and even some going to people's wakes, like whatever the segment of death, sometimes like with police and army around, you were criminalised nearly for going, you know, and it wasn't about what somebody's affiliation was at one or another, but just that they were your neighbour or supporting their family and things like that. And those were, you know, and again, going to matches and being held up, you know, by security force and stuff like that. And that never really got any great coverage down south for what the Northerners had put up with. And now you see one not Ireland, the big rigidity, you know.
Yeah.
So
It's
that and don't realise where people had come from, the previous generation. And post today's generation doesn't even realise it either.
No, they don't.
So, you know, I mean, that was...
We talked to many people in Strabane. They talk about being stopped by army, police, just walking to school, walking out of school.
That's always just aggravation, you know. So, I mean, all of that, like, so, I mean, that was... Living up with that, and living up with loss, you know, and just general, like... younger part of your life, you know. I mean, and for young people, like, I mean, maybe as a priest, you were lucky, like, you know, okay, I would go on to like a long cash as was then, a terminal there. If there's the people on Crumlin Road, or you said the same Mass in McGilligan, that in Aghyaran and place, like, I mean, you know, those are all just to see a tough situation people run for whatever reason, you know, that, and at that point I never counted, like, just how tough that all was, you know. So there were all the one, I mean, I'm talking like, and I mean, so many more priests and so many others that, you know, were at least caught not much and maybe a lot more as well, you know, depending where they were situated. So a lot of that kind of stuff like that, you know, a lot of people lost their youth. You know, in every sense.
Had to grow up all of a sudden.
I grew up, but they also didn't enjoy the freedom of going out at night or all the rest of it, you know. And that way, you know, you could talk about a lost generation, like in terms of sociability or social life and so on, you know, as well. That there's never really documented, or whatever you want to say about it, you know.
Yeah, and I think people just avoided it at that time because of...
Well, you couldn't be bothered, you could have times, like, you think of, you know, got two fellas from Bellaghy going home, like, and held up by a false security thing, you know, it was a UVF or whatever you want to call it, like, been shot dead on their way home from the match, you know, Derry and somebody in 1976 or 75 or so, you know, like, I didn't know the families at that stage, but got to know them later, like, this is really a very simple incident, like, and really typifies what people were going through, or what they were scared of. Even that never happened. The fear was a big thing.
Fear was massive,
So I don't know if you remember watching the Michael Collins movie with the part where the tank drives onto the Croke Park and then
that's right,
just open fire.
That's right, Bloody Sunday.
It's only when you see those things and like a filmer, like kind of opens up your eyes.
Oh, I would have been, and you know, a whole lot more, like, you know, for bags, like, but I mean, that was the teenies that time.
It's funny, actually, I was having that conversation with my son actually on the way down. We were just chatting about kneecap and about how they're bringing back, you know, the Irish language, and about, you know, some of the titles of their songs are about getting the Brits out. And my son was asking me, I said, well, what's that about, mummy? And, you know, so I was actually telling him some of the stories about the morning of my sister's 11 plus and the police landing at our door, knocking on the door, and they come in and raided our house. And they what? Like, he just was just stunned by it, you know, that he couldn't understand. What were they doing that for, you know? So it's funny, like, that I was having them conversations with my son today, actually, just about how it was in our time compared to how it is now. Thank God it has changed.
Well, I started so many everything. I mean, I was in the march on Bloody Sunday.
Oh my God, right.
And when the ring of gunfire, and you know, just sort of was live ammunition flying around, you know.
And that's surreal at that time, I can only imagine.
Oh, the whole aftermath of it, you know, as well, for families, not, you know. So that was January 72, just, you know.
And nothing in life ever prepares you for that kind of grief or that kind of trauma, or, you know.
or that real fear.
Oh, the fear, and then to have that resilience just to keep going is amazing, like, really. And then to support for other people when you yourself are actually struggling through it yourself, like, you know.
So much suffering in such a small part of the world.
Yeah.
Oh, surely, yeah, you know. And some of them, you're asking things you struggle with, I forget what we were saying.
Yeah.
But, you know, those things are all
Definitely challenges,
they're all part of a lifetime experience, you know, that, you know, and it first takes me a while to remember every bloody Sunday, like, for there's so many other things that happens in your own life. That's back to that time, you know, that what things hit you hard, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everybody's dealing with their own trauma over the years.
Yeah.
Surely, you know. But anyway, that's some of the stuff, anyway.
Yeah.
For a bit of it.
So looking back then now, what advice would you give your younger self?
The important thing is self-belief.
Yeah, you mentioned touching that a few times actually.
You've got to believe in God. You know, you've got to believe in yourself, and if you don't do that, like, then you're going to be derailed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're going to be, you know, and you know, because we're very good, you see it, setting each other up, and we're very good at pulling each other down. So you need to know where you are somewhere in the middle, like that. You're, you know, this is me, and you know, okay, it'll be rough going, it'll be this or that, but at the same time,
You're going to be okay.
It'll be okay. You need that thing to say, you know, and I suppose faith really, we're talking about faith, and I suppose it works around this. Faith doesn't tell us how it'll be, it just says things will be all right.
Be okay.
And as long as you believe in the middle of all that you're going through, somehow all these things will work themselves out, and we'll still be on our feet at the end of it.
That's lovely. Yeah, that's lovely.
Really well put.
Yeah.
I remember going through like even difficult parts of my own life, and in the school we had a beautiful oratory in there, like, and they would do like a Friday mass, and I just remember going through a difficult time and going to that mass, just turning up on the Friday, and just I feel like everything was released out of me, like just the spiritual side of it.
Spiritual side, and you know, and only, and it's really, you know, sad to say, like, well, not necessarily sadness always, like, but you know, it's, when you're deeply challenged, then you discover depth in yourself you never thought you had.
Yeah.
I suppose there's that well or whatever it is. Grace, call what you want there.
Even if you think of some
Stubbornness,
of the
even
most... there's a
sometimes.
stubbornness,
Well, stubbornness could be a grace too.
Yeah.
It's like a willpower to succeed,
Willpower,
just...
yeah,
The
to
power
to survive.
and to say, you know, but what you think, you know, you're not going to.
Not going down
I
that
know,
road.
okay, you have to listen and you have to modify and all the rest of it, but somewhere on there, there's somewhere out there that I'm heading towards, and I'm not going to be derailed.
Yeah.
Oh, good father. But I was going to ask you, who would you say has been the greatest influence in your life? Careful on this answer now, there could be people listening to this.
Well, there could be people listening to that, yeah, I don't mind if I do, you know, but I think, you know, at different times in your life and different situations, you know, influences come, you know, and I suppose again, I was saying, you know, don't like to, you know, family, I mean, obviously, and your parents, not to do, and all that is an influence on you, like, and I referred to it earlier, like, you know, and their work ethic and all the rest of it, and it was again, like, a challenge, but I mean, you're reminded how good your older brother was, or older sister was at school, like, you know, all those things are there. I mean, that's set up in front of you as well. But people who listen would know. My sister Caramel.
Oh, fantastic woman.
Now, what she has come through, I mean, she lost two girls to cystic fibrosis.
Yeah.
She lost her son Thomas at almost 17 with brain tumour. And along with that, like the grief we talked about earlier, like with Brendan and Michael and all the rest of the family that died, and my parents and all that, and some of our own friends. And then when my mother died at August, and then on the 8th of December, her husband Tommy Moss died in the chapel in
That's
Milman.
right, yeah.
You know, and she has never complained or never give out, you know, or never wallowed in self-pity.
Yeah.
But again, it was that belief, whatever it is, that strength, like wherever she got it from, and that, you know, has, I think, touched all of us. You know, if I'm being honest, I think it follows, you know, a very powerful witness, and therefore, you know, challenge the rest of us too, like how we would handle and cope, and trying to be a support to her, like. But
But she's at the bar.
She's at the bar.
Oh yeah, the strength it must have took her to get out of bed those days.
Just meet that, because I mean, I tell you, some of the things maybe I discussed earlier, it was hard to push back the blankets in the morning, you know. So that part of our lives is just as family.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not that, you know, you want to blow up anybody, but I think that for me to think of anybody else would be unfair.
Yeah.
wouldn't be recognising what
What?
somebody comes through.
What? Yeah.
Because like whenever I started teaching in 04, it was the convent grammar in Strabane, and I was in there teaching maths, and I had the further maths class, and in that class was Michaela Moss, who's Carmel's daughter, but I had never met Carmel until this point, like, and even I taught Michaela right through until her 7th year, which was the year that her father, Tommy, had passed, and I remember going to the house to help Michaela with her study for her A-level exams, and my God, like, he just, the strength of that woman, Carmel, she was just still herself after all that.
And then it was never happened to an accident or ever slipped, and she hadn't been fit to walk right since, and that in the last number of years, like, and on Union Day, their big frustration was that she could do nothing when I sit there and meet people just and that, so that was her biggest regret at that stage, was she wasn't able to be as useful and as active as she always was, but she lives life and she goes out and about, and she doesn't wallow in self-pity, so all those things are, we are heroics, if you like to put it that, in their own right. And I just would feel that I wouldn't just be talking for myself either, be talking for the rest of us, and that would have gone from us as well, would take note of that too, and there's probably one other person that I would mention too, and that's a fella called Colin Mullen. I don't know if you ever heard of him or not.
No, tell us about Colin Mullen.
I'll tell you about Colin Mullen. Colin Mullen has a story in his own right. I could sit and talk here for quite some time. Colin Mullen was a student in Maynooth, a year and a half of ordination. He was on the St. Colum's Hogan Cup team with Brendan. He was a bit younger. They were playing against each other different times over the years. We were playing against each other in Railway Cup in January 73. But I suppose it would have been Sunday, 28th of January. Brendan had the accident on Thursday morning, and he was picked for the Ulster team. And Colin Mullen, that time they combined universities, played in the Railway Cup, the preliminary round, and Ulster played them that Sunday at Croker's. Him and the other fellas came down from Maynooth to our house on the Friday evening to the wake. And I would say Colin Mullen's the only person my mother talked to anyway rationally for those couple of days. They sat in the road together, and I know they talked for a good while. They left and they stopped because they were one of father Aidan Mullen who died there. He was no man from Mullen. He would have been a bit younger, and our father John L. Walsh and our father Devine from Aghyaran I. They'd all come down to the wake. So stopped no more for about 8 and then on the way out through morning, I think about Clontibbert or somewhere. The Derry express bus was meeting them. And the car passed them out to the bus that they were meeting, and the boy from the bus flicked the lights, she was just saying the man after a wee bit, And the boy seems to have hit the brake, and the busman hit the brakes, and the bus jackknifed into them sideways, into the wee car. And Colin was the driver. And he, as we were talking about different things and people, because talking people, and I mean Sperry, and I mean this now before I finish the story. He, anyway, I think the 3 boys actually in the car with him were unconscious. Colin was still conscious, but realised he couldn't move, and shouted somebody to turn off the car for him. And the fact about it, I discovered later, was that they had come out of Maynooth without any permission, because the owner of a car had come down to Aghyaran to the wake. And I had met a priest, Seamus O'Connell. Seamus would have been friendly with the family anyway. And he met Seamus, and he said, and this is about his mind, the present of mind he had. He said to somebody, maybe you ring Seamus O'Connell, give them Seamus O'Connell's number at the top of his head in the middle of all this crisis. And so because his family wouldn't know what, and actually the news broke. But long story short, and then other fellas that sent people from up in Kilkenny, one of the lads knew me well, but he's also into hurling, teaching, coaching hurling. But anyway, he was a priest and a couple of the students with him. And called him anyway, because the family wouldn't know where he was.
No.
Not a clue what happened, or was he doing County Mullen on a Friday night.
Yeah.
But anyway, because it was out in the news that night, I believe, the lads that came up to Kilkenny and spoke to us at home, said that the boys had a bit of an accident way down, but all right sort of thing, just what to hear something anyway. Didn't realise the full import to the following day. He was taken by helicopter, allowed the British Army to come in and take him from where he was in the car up to the Musgrave in Belfast. They were in the Musgrave for a while, or the Royal for a while, the Musgrave anyway for a while, and he was now quadriplegic. And if he was lifting that glass, that's the way you could lift it. And if you've eaten, as it turned out, he strapped his hands and food had to be cut up and all that sort of thing.
Jeez.
But anyway, and then he was so, the day he gave up on him in Belfast, that he wouldn't survive, but he still survived. That's strength to go out. I remember him being nursed in Limavady Hospital, old hospital, in hammocks to get rid of the bed sores. Or spine injuries and bed sores.
Oh, yeah.
Big time anyway. They spent some time there. He went eventually, you know, I'm not putting anything in a time frame here because for a good wee while, you know. He went to the National Rehabilitation Centre in Dunleary. And I remember going to visit him there, you know. Make a long story short, progress was getting into a wheelchair, which we don't sort of think of it in that those terms. Into a wheelchair. He got back home at that stage. They'd built an extension to his brother's house that he could live in, and all the rest of it. He eventually, you know, I remember he did a tape on the whole thing himself, right now. I lost the tape, never had it for years. Then he did a degree then, he was a brilliant footballer. He did a degree in accountancy and he worked in the family firm and I forget what way he worked the computer, like, you know, stuff like that. More sort of word processing things, you know, at that point. But anyway, never he worked at it anyway. And I remember, you know, I visited him regularly. Quite honest with you, felt the duty. In fact, so, you know, when I saw him, the pain and anguish in and Limavady, I thought Brendan was lucky one to get away. That's just, you know, that's a big statement.
Suffering.
That is, you know. And he, anyway, I don't want to drag it out here, but I remember anyway sitting with him one night, and this fellow, Dermot Healy, who was a priest then, came on TV, now a layman, at the Dublin Hurling Supremo, you know, to get Dublin hurling fixed up. And I used to call him, that man anointed you to your accent, because we never really had talked about the accent. And because it was a rotating bed all the time, you see. Most of the night of it. And I said, well, another priest night that night too. He said, when his mind was so clear, you know, and was that man way was a help, and another way it might get left it harder for him. But so we chatted about that thing then and what way he was. But eventually, and well, one of the things, and then the family asked me to preach at his funeral. And that was the hardest sermon I had to preach because I didn't want it to be about us. Didn't want it to be even about Brent. No, because I'd call him never did things by half. You know, he wouldn't just send a card say, Andy, sorry, here with Brandon. He would have to come, and then I moved on from there. You know, just you know, that's the way. It was very hard to get off the ground, even to start a sermon like that. You know, but that was sort of. But anyway, eventually I was still in Carnhill at the time, and he landed one day driving the van with a robotic wheelchair. To get him out of the van, and he drove me to Aghyaran to meet my mother again. Wow. That's what he wanted to do.
That is amazing.
And he wrote a book, eventually a pamphlet, because I remember my father at 87 was dying, and there was, you know, it was way after that he was able to drive, you know, eventually, but I mean, not a while up, but he had me with him, I was a passenger, must thought it was alright. But anyway, he wrote a pamphlet called Yes, I Take Sugar, because he said you're in a wheelchair, and people would ask, does he take sugar? And he answers for himself. and tell the story, you know, and that like nice title, like, and I suppose people. But what I also want to say to I say he actually learned with his club, you see, and he went out on the 14, actually, the court sort of chat to them and and as I said on his funeral, welcome to Main Street life, because a wee boy let down the air to his wheelchair.
Right.
That'll bring a wee bit of light into it, you know. So came back for my mother's 90th, and fella drove him that night up to a mass in Aghyaran. So we kept a good touch, you know. And anyway, I remember actually meeting Martin Neal after All Ireland in 03. Martin from the columns as well. He says, here's my phone number, if anything happens, call him on, get in touch with me. That meant the esteem for Colin was mighty, you know, all round anyway. But Colin and Bishop Bellaghy offered him to be ordained if he wanted. But I mean, I think in many ways Colin spoke to so many people in different ways through his, you know, and I mean, they were dying with him in Dublin, like in the rehab. I remember going on night and, you know, going out to message at the nurses, fish and chips at all hours, you would, you know. And I talked about even, you know, the wheelchair, you know, progress. I mean, for people to start moving their finger in that place, like, was progress. It was like a kind of a giant womb giving rebirth to people. That's the way I could describe it. The gym was in it, you know. And but anyway, he lived till 2004. He took cancer, tumour, and groin or was, and he died in 2004.
Talk about spirit.
Unwavering. If you're asking about people that influenced me, like,
I
know Carmel's come through her hardship, whatever you want to call it, like. but and inspiring. There's a lot of person who was inspiring in their own way, like.
Absolutely.
Big.
Wow.
So I mean, it takes up a good bit of his chat.
Oh, not a bit, jeez.
I think
it's worth the chatting about.
I think it is there as a memory.
Yeah, but even you mentioned your own mum there, who was like a massive Tyrone fan, and one of my memories of your mum, and even it was the first time I probably met Michaela, was the Sam Maguire came back to
Aghyaran
on the Monday night.
And she'd been in Dublin the night before.
Yeah.
The day before. Our friend of Eugene, who was involved in Nationwide, we used to do the sponsorship of the 25-year team, rang him a couple of weeks before and said, I have 2 tickets for the Ireland, but they're not for you, they're for your mother and Marion. They were the box, And the 2 of them were in the box. Final whistle went, in the presentation, we said, God, no, has she survived the game, I mean, seriously, I mean, she was serious. I remember reading about Tyrone and Cavan, like, if I go back to my mother, he meant, like, when we talk about somebody's love of Jay. In 1930, Tyrone played Cavan and Omer or something, I looked over my shoulder and said, I was at that game. So, I mean,
unbelievable.
That was her interest, But, and so forth, and I was playing football, or any or even marriage or anything else. But, what was I going to say? She was, anyway, we got up in there, she was having a cup of tea, and a man whom she had no time for, Eamon Dunphy, was giving her a hug before he
Right.
and all the people around there, Ward Martin Island was mentioned earlier, but in context of Colin Mullen and Liquid Wire, they were all different, great and good. And this man started to talk about sitting out in the front, the box, and this poor old woman beside him, and he started talking about, explain things as what happened, And he says, I was maybe a couple of minutes, and she turned around and says, it's okay, I understand the game myself.
She put him in his box.
Aye, but anyway, the outfall of that was that he was Mary McAleese's father.
Right.
And that's so anyway, put in his box. Mary McAleese been in my house before the funeral in Bellaghy, and for a cup of tea and all that, but because her husband was from Portland, you see. But anyway, she was up the end to the school in Sladdy, Portland, and about Halloween time, and you had to stand and meet her and shake hands. I shook hands with her again, and I says, I met your parents at All Ireland. She said, I know, I heard all about it.
She'd already heard.
So that was
You didn't miss a beat.
No, a beat, and so that was the funny, like, talking about the respect for Colin, that was Martin O'Neill, like, wanted to be kept in touch about Colin, how he was doing.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Never forgot him.
So, if you could recommend a book or a TV show or a movie, what would it be and why?
Well, I would recommend the Bible.
Sold.
And of course, we selected of the Bible. There's probably, if anybody wants to read in Matthew 5, 6 and 7, maybe a part of 8, with the Sermon on the Mount if you want to get Christianity. Yeah. Or if you really want to find other things about Christianity that appeal to you, then you'll read St. Luke's Gospel.
St. Luke's Gospel.
Aye. But I think I referred to earlier, I'm reading Pope Francis, the Hope, and this is the year of hope. I wouldn't be a wild film buff now, I would go to a film that made sense to me. I watched 2 films, and funny, it turned out they're, that come to mind for me, strongly, in a sense, like, really go to a film. I went to the Passion of the Christ, and that was, I don't know if you ever saw it, that Mel Gibson. And that was very, very rough, how Christ was treated and all that, as you exaggerated it. But the one thing I noticed that night was, see, when leaving, it was a premiere up in Belfast, walking out, looked around, nobody eating their popcorn. All the popcorn are still sitting full in the seats.
Wow.
But that's just one by the way, but the other ones that I think were related were the Banshees of Inisherin.
Right.
And the other one a few years earlier actually was the one
Shakes the Barley.
Those two.
Powerful.
There was a civil war going on the mainland, and the people of Inisherin, felt they were escaping it, but they had their own civil war on the island.
Yeah.
Where was the whole relationship thing.
Yeah, it was like a
parallel of their own, but they didn't realise that they were having their own civil war. And even all the horrible things like, fear and self-destruct and, suspicions and all the different things you had, and the divisions among friends and why he no longer is my friend. I'm not going to detail. You go back to, again, to the title of that I think comes from a song from the 98 Rebellion, the one that Shake the Barley. But again, you see, both the central thing, that was the 2 brothers, like, who fought on the one side, and then when the divide came,
they fought on
our sides, and Anthony, one man responsible for the execution of the other, like, so again, the whole
really
civil war there, but the horrific effect it had on people, I mean, and you know, sense in many ways there was the self-destruct buttons on it as opposed to
Oh,
the
yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
you know. So there was parallel those two, and it was again like it was they showed the worst in any of us if you wanted to look at the mirror and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, in many ways, what we human beings are capable of.
Yeah,
We can talk about all the good
so
we're capable
true,
of, but
actually.
also it shows the
Yeah.
savage side in ourselves as well. You know, how community can self-destruct.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But eventually, the girl that Siobhan, we called the left aisle, like I mean, probably that, I felt that was the resurrection at the end of it. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
somebody saw the light
Yeah,
somewhere.
somebody got out.
Got out.
The only thing I'll say about Banshees of Inisherin is never watch it on Christmas Day because I think it was the worst time I could ever pick to watch
Oh,
that
you couldn't
movie.
watch that. No, no,
All right,
no.
I said it.
But people always amazed me because I read The Exorcist in bed every night and never spoiled my sleep.
Brilliant.
That's my contribution to that.
You're knock of the week.
Hey?
I know this question isn't here in the last one, but I think I should because you touched on about going to that cup final with to watch at Wembley, and I was like, I should have probably had this in here. But being a big Man United fan, I thought I would ask you about that and that cup final. You touched on it, but going to
That was
Wembley.
1985. Kevin Moore sent off.
That's right, yeah.
Paul McGrath made a mistake and Moore covered for it. But then Norman Whiteside scored the goal as well.
Oh, cracker.
Tracker at 17 or 18 years of age at the time, you know. So that's my.
That's a
my-
special
but
memory, like.
Those memories in the day and so on the day or two with Sister Margaret as well.
Yeah.
And along with that, so those, and you know, those again, Eugene Doudford, like all this, those. Him and myself were in, Eugene and myself were in, were in Barcelona, they had the 2 goals in the last minute.
Wow.
And
You didn't leave?
We didn't leave. And we were in Moscow the night of the penalties.
Oh, wow.
Well.
So some.
Chat about
You
special
had some
memories
good
with your
memories,
brother,
yeah.
yeah.
That's to say, like, it's the football in one sense, like,
Yeah.
but it's
the
the catalyst
memories.
that brings people together, you know.
Yeah.
Like the
So true.
Pope talked about the wee boys, so Gerda threw them a ball, and,
Yeah.
you know, so the ball can act as a catalyst, and we talk about, okay, the time it takes up sometimes, like, but, you know, everything in moderation is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Like you talk about ones that go away like on holidays to like the Euro camps and things, and like all these different kids, different cultures.
Aye.
They're all
They
like,
all just mix.
play.
Not a bother. Yeah. Football has
It's
a
more
range
than
of
a-
occasions.
More than any kind, you know, they'll do that for people, you know.
Yeah.
yeah,
There'll be a hurling ball, there'll be
Yeah.
whatever it is, you know.
It's true.
brings people together.
Mm.
Our last question for you.
Yeah. You'll be
How are
like,
you?
thank God.
So, what is it about Aghyaran that's so special? What's your favourite thing about Aghyaran?
Sitting talking to 2 young people. And anyways, yes, the people, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, you can have the loveliest part of the world to live in, but if you're not living with others, like, that's no good.
Can be lonely.
You're very lonely.
Yeah.
So I'd always come back and always feel, and you always felt, you know, you're never away.
Anytime you did come back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can pick up the same conversation
Yeah.
or the same argument again.
People and always welcoming and what's special about Aghyaran is something that I've often thought about. You know, Aghyaran has never any public investment in it.
Wow.
Self-funded.
The first thing ever happened in Aghyaran of any public money was the houses Maharnagir were built to my memory in my lifetime.
Wow.
I mean, I remember the road past our house was a rough road. It was tarred in our childhood. Take it away. We were at the 13, 14 Boyd Roads, the Aghyaran Parish.
Yeah.
And when we were young, you had to drive to Lifford to go to Monria,
Yeah.
or the 5 mile up the road.
Yeah, I remember that.
You know, so I mean, it was very isolated. And then, you know, all the land was taken over for forestry, the whole country. And I suppose now the promises weren't what the paper they weren't written on. If you could really
Yeah.
was that all there'd be industry and the forestry would be felled and there'd be sandmills, there'd be all sorts of things. And we're getting today lorries are on the way to Coleraine and wherever else they're going to and and putting down the bad roads even further.
Yeah.
So I mean, in that way, like for people to look around the place and look at what I call prosperity in it, you know,
Yeah.
despite everything,
Yeah.
says a whole lot about the people and the resilience and like the development of the football club. You know, people worked at it and made the very best of it. So there's a lot of good stuff we could say about Aghyaran, but that's a very,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
when it comes to raising
Yes,
funds.
yeah.
that's a very brief.
Second to none.
Great generosity. Like Parish has built the new broken house, they built the chapel, the GA centre, the club.
The pitch,
and
yeah.
nothing, and nobody in debt, and nobody anything the worse for it.
No.
Yeah.
You know, whatever the community is better.
Yeah.
And Aghyaran centre for people come for funerals and things like that.
Yeah.
in different places, like far away from here, they talk about it.
Yeah. Even there's a friend of mine, like they're big into the running, and they always talk about coming to Gemma's run and how they're treated, how friendly the people are, the spread that they put on.
Yeah, that's better been talked about, you know.
Yeah.
That's the big thing, you know, just the whole,
generosity.
That's all about that. But I mean, again, self-regulating as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a wonderful place
Yeah.
to come from.
It is, I mean, and I say it has an identity. That's an identity now in the way we talk about it. Okay, we'll be biased, like, but a lot of a lot of other people would express their appreciation for how things are done.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Father.
Thank
That's
you. Yeah.
been amazing.
Really
I
good.
don't know what it's like.
Andrew.
Well, wait till you're out the door and then we'll tell you the best. With the real side of us. Thanks to our amazing guest today, Monsignor Father Andy Dolan. Thanks to Claire, my wonderful co-host, as
You're
always.
very welcome.
Please join us again next time.
Yeah.
Slán a while.
Slánawaya.
Oh, sorry, fine.
I was in the press all night.
Under pressure, were you?
Wardrobe, pressure wardrobe.
The collar was getting tighter there.
Chronicles of AghyNarnia.
Folks, playing us out this week with some absolute cracker tunes are two of the most wonderful people you'll ever meet in your life. Now, when I went down to record the music with these two, my God, the crack was 90. Two fantastic people. You'd think you knew them your whole life, and I would like to call them my new besties. It's the two and only Charlie and Claire O'Donnell. Enjoy.
To AghyNarnia and beyond.
The Chronicles of AghyNarnia.